Bright and early this morning, I started off my day by talking to a reporter from The Lily, which is a publication of the Washington Post that, as you can see, elevates stories critical to women and gender. Now, I'm going to be honest. When this person first reached out to me via Twitter, I was kind of like, It's obviously like an intersectional feminist type publication, and that's not really my jam. I think those people are crazy. I think they've done a lot of harm to this country, and so I wasn't really eager to kind of participate, but I did. Because the story that they were covering, I was fascinated because they were covering the agonizing choice for women who are grappling with the decision about whether or not to vote for Joe Biden, given this Me Too allegations against him. And I was like, hang on, Washington Post. You are actually giving space and giving time to the allegations against Joe Biden and talking about why women might not be inclined to vote for him. Like, that's pretty rad. And so I agreed to do the interview. Now, I think this reporter didn't really do her full research on me, because if she had, she would have found out that I had already decided to vote for Trump even before these allegations came out. So it's not really an agonizing decision for me at all. And we're going to talk more about that when we get to my quotes in the article. But, you know, I decided to vote for Trump because Joe Biden is declining. He has obvious dementia, or, you know, very, very minimally, he's sundowning. And so I can't rationalize voting for someone for president of the United States that is an obvious cognitive decline. It just makes no sense to me. And elections and primaries are supposed to weed this stuff out. But of course, the Democratic Party, in full Democratic Party fashion, picked probably the worst possible candidate to go up against Donald Trump in the fall. No one is excited to vote for Joe Biden, and frankly, I think we're probably going to see that in this article. So we're going to give it a read. Full disclosure, I haven't actually read the article yet. I kind of skimmed through it to find my quotes and to see what they put in there, and I'll add a bit more context to that, but I haven't read the full article yet. And so we are actually going to discover this together. But before we get into it, I just want to say, listen, if you enjoy my content, maybe you watched a couple other videos before, go ahead, hit subscribe to the channel just so you get notified when I post new content, stuff like that. Now, if you already think you are subscribed, just give it a little double check for me, because I keep hearing from people that they think they're subscribed and then they're magically unsubscribed by the YouTube gods, who really decide for them about what they should see and hear and what they shouldn't. So just go ahead, be on the safe side, double check, make sure you're subscribed if you want to be. And if you don't want to be subscribed, that's fine too, man. It's cool. We can still be friends. We can still read this article together. All right. It's an agonizing choice. Women grapple with the sexual assault allegations against Joe Biden. Tara Reid alleges the former vice president sexually assaulted her in 1993. First off, this is the most bizarre picture ever, with Joe Biden surrounded by blue lips. I mean, come on, man. Whatever. We can't spend too much time on that, though. In late March, Anna Farr, a 38-year-old independent filmmaker, went down the internet rabbit hole. She Googled and tweeted and posted on Facebook she wanted to know why she couldn't find any mainstream outlet stories about Tara Reid, a woman who alleges former Vice President Joe Biden sexually assaulted her when she was working in his Senate office in 1993. Anna, I think that is a very good question about why we can't find news information about these sexual assaults allegations in mainstream publications. Well done, you. First, a friend sent her a link to a March 24th Intercept article that detailed how the legal advocacy organization Time's Up declined to fund Reid's allegations. Obviously, because Joe Biden's a Democrat and they don't want to mess with that, they only want to fund allegations against Republicans. Then Farr listened to a March 25 interview in which Reid told her story to progressive podcast host Katie Halper. It set off alarm bells that an allegation against a leading Democratic presidential candidate seemed to be hush hush, says Farr, an American citizen who's splitting her time between Toronto and Beirut. In the age of Me Too, she wondered, why in this particular case are we not having a conversation about this? Anna, I think that is a very good and a very deliberate question. And it actually, you know what? It actually makes me feel really good that women are questioning these things and are researching it and are looking into it. And frankly, not that they're just questioning the allegations, but that they're questioning, why isn't the media covering this? is Me Too really on our side? Or are they a shill for the Democratic Party? Gee, I wonder. Farr had followed the several allegations of Biden's inappropriate touching when they first arose in late spring. Gee, could that be a pattern? Could that be a pattern of inappropriate touching? New York Times. New York Times, by the way, like the other day, they published this preposterous story about how they investigated the allegations against Joe Biden and found no pattern of behavior. I'm sorry, what? Like, this is crazy. And other people have covered the New York Times story before. If you want more information on that, I think Tim Pool did a video on it. I'm not going to rehash all that because it's already been done before. But yeah, I mean, come on, man. There's a clear pattern of behavior. There are videos all over the internet about this stuff. If you don't believe it, just go Google and find the videos for yourself because, yeah, come on. Reed, now 56, had been one of those women. She said Biden touched her neck and shoulders when she worked in his Senate office. A year later, on the podcast, Reed said that Biden pinned her against the wall, reached under her skirt, and did something he shouldn't have done. Go read the article. I linked it in the description. Biden's campaign strongly denies Reed's allegations. Well, the initial allegations of inappropriate touching were huge concerns for anybody who's about to endorse and elect a candidate for the presidency, Farr said. It wasn't until I had actually listened to the entire interview with Tara Reid, it went beyond the sniffing the hair, putting hands on the shoulders, to Farr, Reid's account constituted assault. With Biden as the presumptive Democratic nominee in the general election in the fall will pit two white men who have both been accused of sexual misconduct against each other. Across the board, it's the lesser of two evils argument that has left women feeling frustrated. It's a lot about our political system that the leading candidates on both the right and the left have both been accused of sexual assault and have very questionable track records when it comes to women. Now, I'm going to say this. When the reporter interviewed me, she was clearly trying to kind of like push me to a place of saying, yeah, I would really prefer like a woman nominee or something like that. And eventually I just told her, I was like, I actually would have liked Pete Buttigieg to be a nominee. And she says, oh, why did you want Pete Buttigieg to be the nominee? I said, well, he's young, he's got that energy, and we know that we're never going to experience sexual assault allegations against Pete Buttigieg, at least from women, because he doesn't go that way. Like, wouldn't it been, honestly, and listen, we can't go back, and you can think of, I mean, Pete Buttigieg got to be Robot Pete later in the primary, so I can understand why people wouldn't like him so much, but in the beginning, he was a good man, and wouldn't it be nice just to have a president that we don't have to worry about sexual assault allegations? At least not from women. I mean, wouldn't that be like a little bit of a nice break? And like, Pete Buttigieg's husband is so nice. Chasten is like the nicest guy in the world. I got to meet him a couple times. Like, he's just like so lovely. Oh my God. I really hope that, side note, like, I really hope that Pete Buttigieg comes back another time, another year, and tries to run again, because I think he's great, and I think that he should fire his advisors that made him into Robot Pete and SJW Pete later in the election, because he really could have done, I think, a lot better if he hadn't done that. All right, let's see. Where am I? I lost my place. Oh my gosh. Okay, I found it. On Sunday, controversy over Reed's allegations erupted onto the national stage after the New York Times published an analysis of the allegation, which found no pattern of sexual misconduct by Mr. Biden. Come on. New York Times has like no credibility. If you listen to the New York Times, you have to stop. Seriously. A day later, the Washington Post published a piece based on 3 weeks of examining the allegation. The former vice president has been accused of unwanted hugging and other physical contact, but the Post found no other allegations against him as serious as Reed's, the article read. That's kind of, I mean, I don't know if that's saying exactly the same thing, but again, listen, I have to give the Washington Post credit for, at least like in this publication, publishing this piece about the trepidations and calling into question the media's reporting on it. So they still get points from me in that regard. The reports came after Senator Bernie Sanders dropped out of the presidential race on Wednesday, clearing way for Biden to become the presumptive nominee. And of course, Bernie endorsed Biden today, and whatever. I don't know why Bernie Sanders keeps rolling over for these people. I really don't. Well, no, I do know. And listen, we kind of talked about this in the comments of my last video. In my last video, I basically said that Bernie supporters perceive him to be a fighter for them, just like Trump's supporters perceive Trump to be a fighter for them. And a lot of you guys were like, no, Carlin, Bernie is obviously not a fighter. He always rolls over. And I don't disagree with that, man. Bernie does always roll over, as evidenced today by the fact that he endorsed Biden for president. But that's not what I'm talking about when I say that they perceive Bernie to be a fighter. It's perception, man. And for Bernie supporters, and frankly for most Democrats, if I say to them that Trump supporters perceive Trump to be a fighter, you know what they're going to say to me? Carlin, Trump's not fighting for them. Trump's not advocating for them. What are you thinking? Obviously, Trump's not a fighter for them. In exactly the same way that you guys are going to say, Bernie's not a fighter. Bernie rolls over every single time. So you guys are two sides of the same coin, more than you might actually think. But I digress. For some women, Reid's allegation has cost Biden their support. For others, it won't necessarily impact how they approach the polls. But many agree that coverage of the allegations has been too little too late. All right, Lena. Lena's the author of the article. When Laura Crome, a retired social worker and therapist living in New Jersey, first heard about the allegations of Biden inappropriately touching women a year ago, she said she didn't really know what to make of it all. I mean, look, I'm 70 years old, she says. I've known men like this my whole life. But even for Crome, the media's coverage of Reid's allegations, Crome says she thinks that Reid, as well as other women, are credible, has been soft. So she's saying the media's coverage of Reid's allegations has been soft. Crome has been a Sanders supporter since 2016 when he ran against Hillary Clinton in the primary. Now looking towards the general, she is putting her policy values among everything else. My main issues are economic justice and climate change, but it would be nice to have a candidate with a clean record with women. I mean, I just don't know though, again, I believe that everyone should have due process when it comes to allegations of assault. I really do. And so I don't think it's fair at this point to assume that 30-year-old allegations against Joe Biden are automatically true. I don't think that's fair, in the same way that I don't think it was necessarily fair about Brett Kavanaugh, right? I would have loved there to be a more thorough investigation into those allegations, because I still had questions. And I know a lot of people have come forward since then saying that it didn't happen, and I get all that. But at the time, I would have liked there to have been more thorough investigations than just a couple of days with limited witnesses. That was what I wanted back then, and I want the same thing now. I want there to be an investigation into this, because this woman deserves due process. And I don't know, I don't really feel great about 30-year-old allegations kind of suddenly peaking up, but at the same time, listen, I was assaulted back in the day. I've written about it. I've written about it very publicly. I didn't tell people for months. And when I finally did tell people, no one believed me. And so I kind of buried that knowledge in the back of my mind for years and years and years. And I didn't talk about it probably for about 10 years after it happened, because the first people I told didn't believe me. And I just figured that everyone else wouldn't believe me too. And so I understand that, but I also think that there is a process that has to be followed, and people are presumed innocent for a reason, and false Me Too allegations can ruin people's careers. They can ruin people's lives. And so I take it very, very seriously. And I don't understand people who are just like, well, it's just the way it is, and they're passing it off, because they probably wouldn't be doing the same thing if it was the other candidate. Ooh, they're talking about me. Let's see what quotes of mine they used. Carlin Borisenko, a 39-year-old. I just had a birthday yesterday, man. I don't know why they had to put my age in this. Ugh, couldn't they say, I'm gonna change this to 29-year-old in the video. My coach Joshua says that he's trans age. I'm gonna be trans age as well. 29. Pretend you see 29. Living in New Hampshire is less concerned about the allegations against Biden specifically. She believes people should have due process no matter what. See, I'm pretty consistent. Instead, it comes down to how Democrats and proponents of the Me Too movement have handled this particular situation. Borisenko sees a difference in how the party has dealt with the allegations and the ones against Supreme Court Justice Brett M. Kavanaugh, for example. This woman came forward, which is always a difficult thing for anyone. This woman should be taken just as seriously as Christine Blasey Ford was. I'm perfectly happy with that quote. Okay, all right. And I said more too about how I actually did talk to her about how, like, I was more concerned about the dementia and I was more concerned about how the party was handling it. And it wasn't just a referendum on Joe Biden. It was a referendum for me on the Democratic establishment because of they're handling it so hypocritically. This tracks with most partisan scandals, according to Laura Brown, director of the Graduate School of Political Management at George Washington University. Brown says that within the Democratic Party, there does appear to be a higher standard for Tara Reade than there was for Christine Blasey Ford, who in 2018 alleged that Kavanaugh, then a nominee to the Supreme Court who would solidify the court's conservative majority, sexually assaulted her when they were both in high school in the 1980s. And I think that the nature of this scandal in politics, that they are viewed through a partisan lens, says Brown. The Democrats want someone who can beat Donald Trump. And to Democrats, all of Trump's scandals are so far beyond the pale that maybe they don't really know what's happened with Biden. I think that that's frankly, a pretty fair assessment of the situation. Trump's had so many scandals, and regardless of what you think of those scandals, listen, like, here's the deal. Like, when you're in the liberal echo chamber, like, all you hear all day long is how bad Donald Trump is. That is all you hear. How bad he is. Bad, 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 bad. Orange man bad. He can do no right. I was having a conversation today on Twitter, or I was trying to have a conversation, not on Twitter, on Facebook, with people that I knew from back in the day that were friends from before, and I'm using quotes because they're not really friends anymore, and just trying to get them to admit that Donald Trump did one thing right. One thing right, just one single thing. And it was like, nope, we're not going to admit it. Block you on Facebook. And that's the mentality, is that he can do no right. And you're bombarded with these crazy stories all day with these bombastic headlines about what a horrible person is and how many scandals Trump has had, and he just did this bad and he did that bad and he did the other thing bad. And it's this constant kind of chase to like, what's really going to take Donald Trump down. But when you break out of it, as I did, you look back and you're like, that was all nonsense. It was all nonsense. But people who are in it, what I'm trying to express is that people who are in it, they don't know it's nonsense. They don't. And because they're constantly being reinforced by the media, by their friends, by their loved ones every single day, they've probably blocked every single person, not only Trump supporters, but people who even they suspect might not be on the crazy train. They've blocked them too, so they're not seeing this stuff from other people. And so I can certainly understand how you take one allegation against Joe Biden that's not really being covered anywhere in the media, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, you've got this little tiny thing against Biden, but you've got this overwhelming mountain of stuff against Trump. And they're like, whatever, just a Russian plant to get Donald Trump elected. I mean, come on. Many mainstream outlets have pointed out the slew of allegations against President Trump in light of Reade's against Biden. I mean, look, this is what they're doing. It's like, okay, maybe Biden did this one thing that was bad, maybe, but have you heard about all the things that Trump has done and the porn stars and the payoffs and all that crap? Trump has been accused of sexual misconduct by more than a dozen women. As Brown points out, when an Access Hollywood tape emerged a month ahead of the 2016 election in which Trump was recorded saying, when you're a star, blah, 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 we all know that. But the comparisons between the two candidates are moot for women who see any allegation of sexual assault as a deal breaker. Such is the case with Alana Raitt, a 25-year-old bus driver and barista who's also a volunteer aide for Joshua Collins, a Democratic candidate for Congress in Tacoma, Washington. I will not support people who can't seem to respect people's bodily autonomy and can't seem to understand the concept of consent, Raitt says, who identifies as a victim of sexual assault. I don't understand how so many people can say, oh well, Trump's done it too, that's the lowest bar on the planet, and that's not an excuse. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a principled stance. That is what a principled stance looks like. Principles only matter when you stand by them when they are inconvenient. I'm sure for this person, this is not a convenient stance to take. This puts her in a tough spot. I'm sure she's not going to vote for Donald Trump, but she's also saying, based on my principles, I cannot support Joe Biden. I completely respect that position. The same goes for Sarah Ann Massey, who is one of the first women in the October 2017 to allege sexual misconduct by disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein. It doesn't matter which party the accused stands for, she said. For me, sexual violence is not a partisan issue. If we're going to believe survivors, we have to believe them regardless of the politics of their abuser and regardless of whether or not we like their policies. Thank you. And again, I don't necessarily agree with that position because I am of the position that these things should be investigated. First and foremost, I don't think we should ever presume guilt when allegations are made, but I have a tremendous amount of respect for women who are standing up and saying, no, not this time. I totally get it. Although Trump may try to capitalize on the latest allegation, the allegations likely won't be a big talking point for either candidate, according to Brown. Scandal matters more in primaries because those are, to a certain degree, character elections, she said. In this situation, I do think that most Democrats are going to say to themselves, even if Biden is tarnished, Donald Trump is far worse. So on a relative scale, this isn't even an issue to be discussed. Oh my God, do you hear yourselves? On a relative scale, this isn't an issue to be discussed. Okay, serious question for a second. For people who think that this is not a serious issue to be discussed, how many women would Joe Biden have had to assaulted before it becomes a serious issue to discuss? And I'm not implying anything here. I don't know. And again, I believe there should always be an allegation. I'm not making any allegations. I'm not making any inferences with this. I'm just honestly curious, how many would be too many before it becomes an issue that you should have to discuss before you decide to vote for him for president of the United States? I'm just curious. Although Farr, the filmmaker, has been a Sanders fan throughout the primary, she thinks the progressives who are pro-Biden as well as centrists should do soul-searching about how to win over voters like her. What kind of concessions can they make voters who are already on the fence feel more at peace with themselves about casting a ballot for someone who has potentially sexually assaulted someone? Massey, the actress, is daunted by the choice of what to do when it comes to the general election. I don't know how to proceed because it is an agonizing situation, and I look forward to a world where that's not the choice we have to make anymore. And if we had only nominated Pete Buttigieg for the Democratic nomination, we would not have to make this choice. I stand by that selection. I would have liked Tulsi as well, although it's the other thing. I talked to this reporter about this, she didn't put it in her piece, was that I would have really liked Tulsi Gabbard. If we wanted a female nominee, I think she was obviously the strongest candidate. Overall, Lena, I have to say, 2 thumbs up, man. And I have to give props to Lena for covering this article and the way she wrote it. I think it was really, really good. I think it was fair. I think it was balanced. I hate that she put my age in it, but I can't really hold that against her. And I think it was a good article. And I'm really glad to see a more mainstream publication. And again, this is their little sub-brand, whatever, that covers women's issues. So I don't know if you can really call it mainstream, but it's owned by the Washington Post, so I think you have to. And I'm glad to see this coming up, and I'm glad to see it get much more fair coverage. And I'm glad that they got opinions from women who are like, what the what? Maybe we don't want to just vote for Joe Biden. So I think that this is great. Listen, folks, if you made it this far in the video, again, you can always subscribe, do all those things to support my channel, but there are other things that you can do too. You can head over to drcarlin.com. You can get on my email list to keep in touch. You can also get fun merchandise. This What Could Possibly Go Wrong t-shirt has been the best seller so far that I have in my store. I'm going to be adding more stuff to the store too. And of course, you can support my content by either subscribing on PayPal, you can make a donation, or you can sign up on Subscribe Star to make a monthly gift. If you make a monthly gift, there are all sorts of fun perks that you can get as a part of it. Now, I know times are tight, and certainly if you are struggling financially, I do not want you to give to me. I don't want you to buy stuff. The stuff will always be here for when you bounce back. I don't want you to do that. But if you are inclined and want to donate and support my work so I can produce more of this stuff, I greatly, greatly appreciate it. And I will do my very best not to let you down.